Welcome to another session of Matthew's Friends Kitchen. Today I'm going to be talking about budget items because we get a lot of inquiries into Matthew's Friends about keto proving to be expensive for people. And when people have got tight budgets and food's going up, it can be a real problem for some families. So what I'm hoping to do today is to give you some ideas of how to buy cheaper ingredients and what to look for when you're doing it. And most of all, don't feel bad about going for the value brands. Don't feel that you're not getting the best you can. We'd all love to buy organic all the time, but the truth of the matter is we can't. I can't do it, I can't afford to do that, and I'm sure there's a great many families out there that can't either. So what we're having to do is provide as nutritious food as we can, as nicer food as we can, on a budget in order to make our loved ones better, be it child or adult. So let's see if we can help you through the minefield and stop you worrying a little bit. So I'm going to start off by saying if you've got a freezer, use it, because that can be your greatest asset. So I'm going to tell you a few things to buy here. Now, my closest shop, as you can imagine, is Morrison's. This is why you'll see a few of these. But all the big supermarkets have got their own brands. Budget stores, budget supermarkets, use them because they've got some fantastic products in there. So I'm just going through what I've used and what's close to me. So we're going to start off with a lovely low staple that we use quite a bit, which is frozen cauliflower florets. These are really great because they're about, I think this was about 96p a bag. You can keep those in the freezer, pull out what you want, and they're stored for a long time, so you get no wastage. So sometimes you've got to pay out a little bit more, but they'll stay in the freezer longer, you get no waste with them, and you can use them for all your different dishes. Same with broccoli florets there, and all the different veggies. When you're looking in your freezer department and you're looking at buying vegetables, look at the frozen varieties. They're pre-prepared for you, there's no wastage, and if you go for the Savers brand and the value brands, they're also going to be a lot cheaper. They're no different, they're still the vegetables, they're just probably different shapes, different, don't come up to supermarket super duper standard, that all look a uniform size. So don't worry about that, they're still the vegetables in there, they've not done anything nasty to them. So the other ones, if you haven't got freezer space or you don't like frozen veg, you really don't want to use them, look at the fresh varieties, but look at the misshapen range, the loose range, the ones that aren't pre-washed, pre-packed. Go to a local greengrocer. Markets are really good. They're a lot cheaper as well. And look at buying them direct from a greengrocer's or a market stall, or get your value brands again. Morrison's do a great one called Wonky Veg. So we've got wonky onions there that are all the small ones that maybe you only need for a ketogenic diet anyway. Wonky peppers, wonky tomatoes. So all the ones that aren't the lovely shiny size and all polished and washed, those are the ones that you want to go for because they're cheaper and they are just as good. There's no problem with those. Again, we've got bags of curly kale there, which are really good. If you don't use a whole bag of curly kale up in one sitting, you can always put it in a bag yourself and freeze it. So you can still freeze these kind of things yourself if you want to, and if you get a batch or you find them cheaper in the supermarket. Courgettes, another good one. Get your value brands, wonky brands, misshapen brands. Use those are great. So many of these vegetables are wasted that it's criminal. So let's use them as much and create demand for them, to be quite honest, because they're just as good. So we've got some mix of frozen veg here. These are frozen diced onions. Like I say, if you don't want wonky, you can just use what you want from there. And we've got sliced mushrooms, and you can get frozen peppers by the bag as well, which again, store up, keep in your freezer, use the little bits at a time that you want. If you have bought a bag of wonky peppers and you haven't used them all, chop them up yourself and put them in a freezer bag and keep them in there, and then just pull out what you want. So all these kind of things are going to be useful to you, but your freezer is one of your biggest assets. Now, moving on to some store cupboard staples, you'll see here that I've got some Savers eggs. Now, this can be a little bit of a controversial subject. Savers eggs, value eggs, whatever your supermarket calls them. Ideally, we'd love to have organic, free-range eggs where chickens have been skipping around a field, living a wonderful life. And for the most part, yes, we all want to buy those eggs. Sometimes the budget won't allow. So if you have to buy value or savers eggs that came from caged birds, you may not like the idea, but sometimes we have to look at priorities. And our priority is our sick child and putting food on the table. So if you have to buy these kind of eggs and you're using them in cooking and in omelettes and those kind of things, don't feel bad about it. We're doing what we have to do, and sometimes a few sacrifices need to be made. Yes, I would always advocate buy at least free-range eggs. I do when I can, but I also know what it's like when you haven't got the money. So shop around, see what value you can get. It's about making sure food is put on the table and it's in the correct ratio. That's what we're going to be looking at first and foremost. Moving across to tin tomatoes. Yes, you can get lovely, super duper plump Italian tomatoes in a tin, and they look lovely and they're nice and rich, but they're also about 70 to 80p a tin. These are 30. Makes a big difference when you're using quite a bit of them. They're slightly more watery, but if you're making a bolognese, really does it make that much of a difference? So go for your value or your savers brands of tin tomatoes. They're still tinned tomatoes. So that's those. Again, with your passata, if you like to use passata in your sauce bases, again, go for a value brand. Store cupboard staple, a lot cheaper than some of the more expensive ones. Have a look around for those on your shelf. So here we're looking at the cheaper versions. KTC do a really good brand, but they're also a cheaper brand of your coconut milk if you use a lot of those. So that's a good one to use. Again, if you use a lot of this, have a look. We've got chopped spinach here. This can be a good one. If you're making like a spinach and cauliflower bhaji to go with your curry instead of rice. So this would be a good one to use to keep in the cupboard for that one. Or again, frozen spinach, those kind of things. Tinned and frozen can be your lifesaver and can be stored, no wastage, easy to keep in the cupboard for when you need it. For cheap puddings, your sugar-free jellies, it's really a staple. I've got Hartley's there, but sometimes the shops do their own brand. So have a look, make sure that they're sugar-free. Obviously, it makes a cheap pudding if you want to, and something sweet. Tinned fish, they're always quite good. I've got extra value tuna there. It doesn't matter if you're mixing it up with mayonnaise or putting it in a dish of some kind. It doesn't matter whether it's value tuna or a more expensive tin. Look at your budget first. Next, butter. Buy the shop's own brand. It's the same. They're just charging more for fancy wrapping. So it's got exactly the same fat value in it. Just use your shop's own value of butter because we're using it for cooking. So you still get a lovely flavour to it. It's no problem. So I use this stuff all the time, whether it's keto or not. And it's absolutely fine. It's great. I use it in all my baking and stuff. We've got here olive oil. You can use that. If you don't want to use olive oil, a vegetable oil is fine. Just use an ordinary cheap vegetable oil if that's what you need to. We don't normally cook to really high temperatures with olive oil because it can go a little bit smelly. But you can still fry with it. It's fine, but get a shop's own brand. We never cook with extra virgin olive oil, so you're wasting your money if you do that. Coconut oil, you'll see that a lot is used in cooking. You can buy organic coconut oil and it can be quite expensive. This is 100% pure coconut oil, as it says. It's a cheaper brand. It doesn't have the coconut flavour or smell. It's very basic, but it's coconut oil and it's about £2.50 a pot instead of about £5 or £10, depending on where you're going to. Over here, we're looking more towards your proteins. Cheeses. Go for your value, extra mature or cheddar cheese. You can buy a big block like this, and if you're going, but we don't need a great big block like that, well, it's fine. Chop it up into little sections, put it in a bag, put it in the freezer. But it pays you to buy a bigger block like this of the value brand and then just freeze it yourself if you can, or wrap it up, keep it in the fridge. Here, you've got things like minced beef. You can buy the extra lean minced steak if you want to. If you buy ordinary minced beef, that's fine. Also look in the freezer section for your minced beef, because sometimes they do great big bags of mince in there, and if some of it are like 20% fat, it doesn't really matter. Remember, this is a high fat diet. So in some instances, if you want to buy extra lean minced steak and add more fat to it, you can. But if you can't afford to, buy your frozen mince, Buy the cheaper brands, it's fine. Turkey is a good one. Instead of using chicken sometimes, turkey's a cheaper option. Sometimes they have these specials on where you go 3 for £10 and you might be looking at it going, crikey, I don't need all that. Well, then you just take it home and then you divide it into the portions you need and put it in the freezer. Again, your freezer will become your best friend. Turkey can be cheaper than chicken. If you really like chicken, there are bags of frozen thighs that you can buy. I get them and keep them in my freezer, and they're about £2 for a big bag, and you just take out what you need to defrost in advance. Now this looks a really ugly pack, but that really ugly pack of bacon, which is what it is about £2. So it's not pretty, but we don't really eat raw bacon, so we're cooking with it. So if you're going to do omelettes or you're going to put it into flavour, it makes no odds using that. Because again, you can take that big pack home and then split it up and put it in the freezer and use it as you want in tiny little portions, or you can even weigh it out yourself beforehand. It's got some extra fat in it, but you'll be frying it anyway. So don't worry too much. No, it doesn't look pretty, but it is really good value. So don't rule it out and have a look in your supermarket and see what they've got. Now this is one of the final things I'm going to come on to, which is your full fat soft cheese, which is marvellous for making a really quick cheese sauce. Now I've got 2 different varieties here. Now we've got the Morrison's Savers, which is great. It's full fat, but the one up, which is Morrison's own brand, has got more fat in it. So if we're looking at the difference, this one's got 0.2 more carb. It's slightly more in carb, but it's got a lot less fat in it than that one. So sometimes it's better to look at the labels and go, oh, maybe I'll get this one. That one costs about £1.85 and this one was about 50p. So that's the difference. So it depends on you on which one you want to go for. If the budget's really tight and you can't go for that one, or you can't go for a big branded one, then you can use this and mix some of that or some of that into it. So it's not the end of the world. So again, watch your budget, use what you can, but the main thing is don't be afraid to look at different things, at tinned and at freezer stuff, because that is what's going to save you the money, especially if you're on a tight budget. And don't feel guilty about it. Like I say, we've got a lot of parents that are going, I want to buy organic coconut oil, I want to buy the best. We all do. When we've got a sick child, we want to buy the best we can for them. We want to do the best we can. But the realistic as we have to be, we may not have the budget to do that. I was a single mum with 2 kids, so I had to be really careful with my budget, and some of these can be lifesavers. We're after getting nice food, we want them to eat, we want them to have tasty recipes, and all this here can make lots of tasty recipes for you, your loved one and your child, and you can make family meals with all of it. So I hope some of that's been useful. If you want any other guidance on budget foods, or if you've got any problems at all, then don't hesitate to contact us at Keto Kitchen and at Matthew's Friends, and we'll do all we can to help you.